Kids today have no idea what it was like. You would walk into a video store and see what they had to rent for the weekend. If you were lucky enough to have an independent video store, then you never knew what you were going to get. At Blockbuster, you would see a giant wall of the newest releases and decide, do I really need to see the Steven Seagal save an oil rig while playing a Native American movie? But if you walk through the aisles, you would see random video covers and usually have no idea what the movie was about. That was the best part of it. Every box was a mystery. By the cover art, you were either in for the best movie you had ever seen or something that had absolutely nothing to do with what was on the front of the box. Sometimes it would be both. Since video stores were popping up all over the place, there was a lot of shelf space that had to be filled. Low-budget horror films began to flood the market. Roger Corman, who had been the king of the same business plan for drive-ins, turned his attention to the video market. Through this, a lot of gems were discovered by video store patrons. If you were lucky enough to see a video cover of a robot arm holding a shopping bag with a severed head in it, then you were fortunate enough to experience, that's right, experience the movie Chopping Mall. Your life has never been the same since. Let's take a moment and revisit this low-budget classic, Chopping Mall.
Nice hearing from you, Carlos.
Director Jim Wynorski had wanted to work with Roger Corman and heard that Roger's wife Julie, who was a producer on a lot of Roger's films, had a deal with Vestron to make a horror film set in a mall. He quickly offered to write one if he could direct it. Jim and his co-writer Steve Mitchell wrote up the story in 24 hours and sent it over to Julie. She sent the idea over to Vestron and they loved the idea, greenlit it within a week despite no script having been written. They set out for the next month to write up what would become Chopping Mall. In Chopping Mall, a Californian shopping mall shows off their new state-of-the-art security robots. These new bots will patrol the mall after hours and stop any thefts or break-ins. Demonstration shows how these security bots will safely patrol the mall and keep those that work there safe. Anyone in the mall after hours simply has to have a badge scanned and the bots will simply pass them on by. Over at another store, a group of teenagers? It was the 80s. Most teenagers looked about 35. They're planning on sneaking into the mall after it closes and take up in the furniture store. There are plenty of couches and beds to spend their night on. The guys and girls show up and lock themselves in as the new security bots are about to start their rounds. What no one could have foreseen, unless they had watched the movie Short Circuit from the year before, was that the mall gets struck by lightning, which scrambles the computer system that controls the robots. Instead of being harmless patrolling robots, they are now vicious killing machines to anyone they run across. Thanks for watching Revisited. If you enjoy our shows, then make sure to subscribe. Like the video and click on the bell to be notified when a new episode goes up. Now, back to the show. As the stowaways leave the furniture store to refill their cigarettes and beers, they run into the robots. Immediately, they learn that the bots will stop at nothing to get these intruders out of their mall. What ensues is a shocking, head-exploding, flame-throwing, and gum-chewing good time. Jim Wynorski met with Roger Corman for lunch before the movie started filming. He said Roger gave him more of a film school in 1 hour than he had when he actually went to film school. After lunch, he said, "Here is what you got to do," and he gave me film school in an hour. Everything I learned in film school didn't matter, but what he said made a lot of sense. Jim was a big fan of Corman's and wanted to fill the film with some fun in-jokes. Corman regulars Dick Miller, Mary Warnov, Paul Bartel make appearances as their character from other movies. Dick Miller's character is credited as Walter Paisley, which is his character from the Corman classic Bucket of Blood. Warnov and Bartel are playing their same characters as Mary and Paul Bland from Eating Raoul. What we end up getting with the film is a low-budget special effects cheese fest. I say that as a giant compliment. The characters are your typical 80s cliches that work perfectly in this movie. The character of Mike, played by John Terlesky, chews as much of the scenery as he does his gum in the entire film. He's a smarmy guy that considers himself a ladies' man unless he's confronted by her father. You could tell he would be the type that would give the teacher the finger behind their back at school. He has one of the most punchable faces from the 80s, and I say that with complete love and affection. The notable actor of the film is the always amazing Barbara Crampton. She plays Susie Lynn. You first meet her at her job serving the undeserving masses at the mall restaurant. Anyone that has worked at a mall food establishment can sympathize with her after she keeps getting called by annoying customers and dealing with her horrible boss. A night hanging out with her boyfriend should make up for it. We end up hoping that she will survive the night, but after she has a breakdown while trying to crawl through the ventilation ducts to escape, you can tell she will unfortunately be another victim of the security bots. Susie Lynn, we hardly knew ye. Kelli, Maroney, and Tony O'Dell play the more nerdy type of characters that are being set up on a blind date. They end up spending most of their time watching old Corman films on the TV rather than they do giving into their bestial urges like everybody else. In the end, they're the only ones to survive the laser blast from the robots and walk out of the mall. The special effects are great for the time period. It's the typical laser blast from the robots that become the big focus of the film. We are shown how dangerous they are early on when one of the girls gets her head disintegrated while running away from one of the killer bots. The bots themselves are pretty simple looking. The previously mentioned Short Circuit showed us a complex robot the previous year. This film shows the bots more as tanks. The arms are simple grabbing sticks while the heads just move back and forth with a menacing red visor on the front. Kind of reminds you of Knight Rider. The special effects crew actually built 5 remote control robots for the film. Even with a small budget, they were able to get most of the scenes in the film done with completely remote controlled robots. They were cheaply constructed with items like wheelchair frames and pieces of conveyor belt treads. There weren't a lot of problems using the robots during production. The design team kept the look simple and it works effectively. Those that are now trapped in the mall have to head down to the gun store. Good old America. What they end up with is a lot of guns and a lot of explosives. Guns themselves don't seem to be very helpful against the robots, but filling up cans of fuel and sliding them curling style into them works perfectly. The explosions inside this mall are fantastic to watch. The robots fight back, but ultimately end up not being much of a match for explosives. If the titular mall from Chopping Mall looks familiar, then you've watched either Fast Times at Ridgemont High or the Schwarzenegger film Commando. All 3 filmed in the Sherman Oaks Galleria. Commando specifically filmed around the same time as Chopping Mall, but had a much higher budget. Unfortunately for our film, they were only allowed to film after all the stores were closed and had to remove all equipment by the time the mall opened at 9 a.m. the next morning. They shot for 20 days at the mall, and Wynorski has stated that the owner of the mall loved the movie being shot there. He was very friendly and supportive, but the night watchman hated that they were there and was very negative towards the crew the entire shoot. If anyone had a bad time on the set, it ended up being director Jim Wynorski. When the stunt team was setting up the spot where the character Greg is thrown to his death from the 3rd level of the mall, the director asked if he could set it up from the 2nd floor so he could try it. They did, and he successfully completed the stunt. What no one knew was that he actually broke one of his ribs and didn't tell anybody on the set until after the film was done shooting. The film finally came out in March 1986 under the title Killbots, which is a pretty awesome name. It didn't do very well, and it was thought it would be another film lost to history. The directors thought that maybe the title had turned off the audiences who might have thought it was a kids movie along the lines of Transformers. They changed it to Chopping Mall with 15 minutes cut out of the film, and it did much better and became the video store classic that it is today. As far back as 2011, the late Robert Hall announced that he had been working on a remake of the film. His take on it would have gotten rid of the killer robots and brought in killer mannequins that had been imbued with the souls of slaves. The original film's director, Jim Wynorski, in 2018 claimed that the remake was never happening. He said that Hall didn't contact him or Lionsgate, who share the rights for the film. Wynorski didn't seem to appreciate Hall's take on the film either, stating that the Chopping Mall without robots, that wasn't Chopping Mall. To keep any disrespectful remakes from happening, Wynorski announced that he was planning on doing a TV series based on the movie. He planned for it to be a sequel and would see the mall once again use modern robots to patrol after closing. Do they ever learn? He announced this in 2018, but nothing has been heard about it since. ABC series Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did their own homage to Chopping Mall in a 2020 episode, where the team time traveled back to the 80s. There, they were hunted by some robots that looked an awful lot like the Chopping Mall robots. After the episode aired, Wynorski was livid and said that Marvel was plagiarizing his work. If you haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry, you haven't been spoiled. The glorious thing about Chopping Mall is that it can't be spoiled. Robots take over a mall, people fight back, heads explode. What more do you need to know? If you have the Shudder app, you can watch the film with JoBlo Briggs dropping in every couple minutes to give you some facts about the movie. He even chats with Kelli Maroney about what it was like to work on the movie. All this is in an episode of his movie show, The Last Drive-In. No matter how you watch it, you'll have a great time.
On the soaked streets of Blue Island. And my father, though a strong man, you know, I swear I saw him crying. Another generation gone has ceased subsiding. When you say a prayer and you put him in the the ground. You speak of whiskey and it's mark and bound.